The sun was barely up, and already Karen's voice was piercing the quiet of our cul-de-sac like a drill through drywall. "That mailbox is an eyesore!" she shrieked, her nasal tone carrying over the neatly trimmed hedges. I peeked through the blinds, coffee mug in hand, watching her gesticulate wildly at my front yard. My wife, Lena, groaned from the kitchen. "What's she whining about now, Jake?" she called, her voice thick with the exhaustion of dealing with Karen's nonsense for the past 6 months. I didn't answer right away because I was too busy watching Karen, decked out in her signature pastel cardigan and pearls, pointing at our mailbox like it had personally insulted her ancestors. The mailbox was a deep navy blue, a color we'd chosen to match the shutters on our house. Apparently, that was a crime in Karen's rulebook. Our neighborhood, Willow Creek, was a postcard-perfect slice of suburbia. White picket fences, manicured lawns, and a homeowners association that Karen ruled like a dictator in yoga pants. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was the self-appointed queen wielding her clipboard like a scepter. Every week it was something new, a fine for leaving our trash cans out an hour past pickup, a citation for planting tulips instead of roses, or a passive-aggressive note about our dog Rusty barking at a squirrel. But welding our gate shut? That was a new low even for her. It all started when we moved in. Lena and I had saved for years to buy our dream home, a cozy 2-story with a big backyard for our kids, Mia and Ethan, to play in. We'd barely unpacked when Karen knocked on our door, smiling like a crocodile with a fresh kill. "Welcome to Willow Creek," she'd said, handing us a binder thicker than a phone book. "These are the HOA covenants. I expect you'll follow them to the letter." I should have known then that her smile was a warning, but I was too busy trying to keep Mia from coloring on the walls to see the red flags. Fast forward 6 months, and Karen had made it her mission to make our lives hell. The mailbox was just the latest battleground. According to her, navy blue was too bold and violated the HOA's color palette, which apparently only allowed beige, cream, or tasteful gray. I'd laughed it off at first, thinking she couldn't be serious. But then the fines started rolling in. $50, then $100, then $200. When we refused to repaint the mailbox, Karen escalated. She sent a landscaping company to accidentally rip out our flower beds, claiming they were non-compliant. Lena was in tears, and I was ready to march over to Karen's house and shove that binder where the sun didn't shine, but I held back. I'm not a hothead by nature. I'm a planner, a problem solver. I own a small construction company, and I've dealt with enough entitled clients to know that losing your cool only gives them ammunition. So I tried diplomacy. I went to an HOA meeting, stood up in front of Karen and her posse of loyal minions, and calmly explained that the mailbox color wasn't worth this war. Karen just smirked, her lips pursed like she'd sucked on a lemon. "Rules are rules, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "If you can't follow them, perhaps Willow Creek isn't the place for you." That's when I knew reasoning with her was like trying to negotiate with a brick wall. But I wasn't about to let her win. Not when Lena was waking up every morning, dreading the next letter in our mailbox. Not when Mia asked why the mean lady hated us. I started digging. Karen wasn't just a control freak, she was untouchable, or so she thought. Her husband, Gary, was a spineless real estate agent who nodded along to her every whim, and her brother-in-law was on the city council, which gave her an inflated sense of power. She'd been running Willow Creek like her personal fiefdom for years, and no one had ever challenged her. Until me. The gate incident happened on a Tuesday. I'd been at a job site all day, overseeing a new build, when Lena called me, her voice shaking. "Jake, you need to come home, now." I could hear Mia crying in the background, and my stomach dropped. I sped home, pulling into our driveway, to find Lena standing outside our front gate, which was part of the wrought iron fence surrounding our property. The gate was welded shut, thick, ugly beads of metal fusing it to the frame. Lena was holding Ethan's hand and Mia was clinging to her leg, both kids wide-eyed and scared. "We couldn't get out," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I tried to take the kids to school and we were trapped." I felt a rage I hadn't known I was capable of. This wasn't just petty anymore. This was dangerous. What if there'd been an emergency, a fire, a medical crisis? I stormed over to Karen's house, 2 doors down, and pounded on her door. She answered, cool as a cucumber, like she'd been expecting me. "Problem, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her eyebrows arched. "Did you weld my fucking gate shut?" I demanded, not caring about the HOA's no profanity rule. She didn't even flinch. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "But if your gate's broken, maybe it's a sign you're not maintaining your property properly. I can have the HOA issue a fine for that." I wanted to scream, to grab her precious clipboard and snap it in half, but her smugness told me everything I needed to know. She'd done it, or she'd had someone do it, and she thought she'd get away with it. That's when the idea hit me. Not just to fight back, but to destroy her. Karen thought she owned this neighborhood, but I was about to show her what real power looked like. I spent the next week researching. I called in favors from old buddies in real estate and city planning. Turns out, Karen's house and half the street were part of a single land parcel owned by a holding company. The company was looking to sell and they were desperate. Something about tax issues and a looming bankruptcy. I saw my chance. I didn't just want to fix my gate or win a petty HOA battle. I wanted to hit Karen where it hurt, her home, her status, her whole damn world. I met with the holding company's rep, a guy named Tom who smelled like cheap cologne and desperation. "The parcels are steel," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. 6 houses, including the HOA president's, but it's a package deal. Buy the whole street or nothing. The price was steep, $3.2 million, but I had savings, a business loan I could leverage, and a silent partner from my construction. Days who owed me big. I crunched the numbers, and it was doable, barely. But the thought of Karen's face when she realized I owned her house, that was worth every penny. I didn't tell Lena the full plan. She knew I was working on something, but I kept it vague, saying I was handling Karen. She trusted me, but I could see the worry in her eyes. The kids were still shaken from the gate incident, and Rusty had started growling every time Karen's car drove by. I worked late into the night, finalizing the deal. By Friday, I'd signed the papers. I owned the street, Karen's house included, and she had no idea what was coming. The eviction notice was my masterpiece. I had a lawyer friend draft it, making sure every word was airtight. I didn't just want to kick her out, I wanted it to sting. The notice gave her 30 days to vacate, citing new ownership and planned redevelopment. I added a personal touch, a photo of our navy blue mailbox taped to the envelope. Childish? Maybe. Satisfying? Hell yes. I hand-delivered it myself, walking up to Karen's pristine front door with a smile that matched her own crocodile grin. She opened the door, saw the envelope, and her face went from smug to confused in half a second. "What's this?" she snapped, snatching it from my hand. "Read it and find out," I said, turning to walk away. I heard her rip it open, heard the sharp intake of breath as she realized what it was. I didn't look back, but I could feel her staring daggers into my back. For the first time in months, I felt like I was winning. The moment I walked away from Karen's doorstep, leaving her clutching that eviction notice like it was a live grenade, I knew the war was far from over. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. She'd built her whole identity on being the queen bee of Willow Creek, and I'd just yanked her crown off and stomped on it. But damn, it felt good. For the first time since she'd welded our gate shut, I slept like a baby that night, dreaming of her packing her pastel cardigans into cardboard boxes while muttering curses under her breath. Lena, though, wasn't as calm. "Jake, what did you do?" she asked over breakfast, her eyes scanning. My face for answers I wasn't ready to give. "Just trust me," I said, kissing her forehead. "Karen's about to learn what happens when you mess with the Carters." The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing like a kicked-over beehive. I stepped outside to grab the paper and saw Karen's minions, Mrs. Thompson with her yappy chihuahua, and Mr. Reynolds with his golf cart, huddled in her driveway, whispering and throwing glances my way. Karen herself was nowhere in sight, but her SUV was parked crooked, like she'd peeled out in a rage and come back in a huff. I smirked, sipping my coffee. Let her stew, let her think she could outsmart me. I'd spent years in construction, dealing with shady contractors and bureaucrats who thought they could bully me into submission. Karen was just another obstacle, and I was a bulldozer. By noon, the first shot in her counterattack came. A tow truck rolled up to our driveway, the driver hopping out with a clipboard and a smug grin. "Gotta tow your truck," he said, pointing at my F-150. "HOA violation, parked too close to the curb." I laughed in his face. "Check your paperwork, buddy. I own this street now. You're not towing shit." His grin faltered as he double-checked his orders, mumbled something about a mix-up, and hightailed it out of there. Lena watched from the window, her arms crossed. "Jake, you need to tell me what's going on," she said, her voice tight. I sighed and sat her down, spilling the whole plan. How I'd bought the street, how Karen's house was now mine, and how I'd served her an eviction notice. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're insane," she said, but there was a spark of admiration in her voice. "Just be careful. She's not going to take this lying down." Lena was right. Karen didn't just fight back, she went nuclear. By the next day, she'd rallied her HOA cronies and slapped me with a lawsuit, claiming I'd violated some obscure clause in the HOA bylaws about unauthorized land purchases. It was bullshit, and my lawyer friend, Mike, confirmed it. "She's grasping at straws," he said, chuckling over beers at my place. "The purchase is legal, and her lease agreement with the holding company terminated the second you signed the papers. She's got no leg to stand on." Still, Karen's lawsuit was a headache. She dragged it out, filing motions and demanding hearings, all while plastering the neighborhood with flyers calling me a hostile outsider trying to destroy Willow Creek's values. I had to hand it to her. She had a knack for drama, but I wasn't sitting idle. While Karen was busy playing victim, I was working on phase 2 of my plan, dismantling her power base. The HOA board was her personal fan club, but I owned the land they lived on now. I started with Mr. Reynolds, the golf cart guy. He was a retired accountant, easily swayed by numbers. I invited him over for a friendly chat and laid it out. "Sell me your house at market value, or I'll raise your rent to triple what you're paying now." His face went pale, and by the end of the week, he'd signed over his deed and moved to a condo across town. One down, 4 to go, Mrs. Thompson was next. Her chihuahua, Muffin, had been terrorizing Rusty for months, and I knew she was terrified of losing her emotional support animal. I played dirty, hinting that the new property rules might not allow pets over £5. It was a bluff, but she folded like a cheap lawn chair, selling her house to me for a song. 2 down. The other board members followed suit, one by one, either because they saw the writing on the wall or because I made it clear I wasn't above playing hardball. By the end of the month, the HOA board was gutted, and Karen was left with no allies except her spineless husband Gary, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen, of course, didn't take this lying down. She started showing up at my construction sites, bad-mouthing me to my clients and spreading rumors that my company was under investigation. It was a low blow, but it backfired. My clients knew me, trusted me, and one of them, a big shot developer named Carla, called me laughing. "That lady's unhinged," she said. "Tried to tell me you're running a Ponzi scheme. I told her to take her crazy somewhere else." Carla's support gave me an idea. I asked her to spread the word among her contacts. Anyone who wanted to do business with me got first dibs on the Willow Creek properties I now owned. Suddenly, I had investors lining up, eager to turn the street into a mix of rentals and flips. Karen's kingdom was crumbling, and I was the wrecking ball. But the real kicker came when I found out about Karen's brother-in-law, Councilman Dan. He was the ace up her sleeve, the reason she thought she could get away with anything. I did some digging and discovered Dan wasn't as clean as his pressed suit suggested. He'd been funneling city contracts to a buddy's construction firm in exchange for kickbacks. It wasn't hard to get proof. People talk when you wave. A little cash around. I didn't confront him directly. Instead, I sent an anonymous tip to a local reporter, a guy named Pete, who'd been itching to break a corruption story. Within days, Dan was under investigation, and Karen's smug confidence started to crack. One night, as I was grilling burgers in the backyard, Karen showed up at my gate, unwelded now thanks to a buddy with a blowtorch. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her hair frazzled and her cardigan wrinkled. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "You think you can ruin me?" "I'm not ruining you, Karen," I said, flipping a burger. "You did that yourself when you decided to fuck with my family." She flinched at the word, but her eyes burned with defiance. "This isn't over, Jake. I've got friends in high places. You'll regret this." I leaned in, smiling. "Your friends are jumping ship, and your brother-in-law's about to be front-page news. Keep pushing, and I'll make sure you're out of here in a week, not a month." She stormed off, but I could tell I'd rattled her. The next day, I got a call from Mike. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Karen's trying to organize a neighborhood boycott. Says no one should sell to you or rent from you." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. A boycott? In a neighborhood where I owned half the houses? Good luck with that. But Karen's desperation was starting to worry Lena. "She's not going to stop, Jake," she said one night, her hands twisting a dish towel. "What if she does something worse than the gate? What if she hurts the kids?" I pulled her close, promising I'd keep her safe. But her words stuck with me. Karen was cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous. I doubled down on security, cameras, motion lights, even a guard dog for Rusty to pal around with. I wasn't taking any chances. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. Late one night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Check your backyard." My heart pounded as I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. There, spray-painted across our fence in bright red letters, was a single word: revenge. I called the cops, but they said there was no proof it was Karen. The cameras hadn't caught anything, and the paint was still wet, mocking me. Lena was shaking when I told her, and for the first time I wondered if I'd pushed too far, but I wasn't backing down. Karen wanted a war. She'd get one. I just didn't know how dirty she was willing to play, or what she'd do next to protect her crumbling empire. The word revenge glared at me from the fence, the red paint dripping like blood under the beam of my flashlight. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. Lena was inside, clutching her phone, ready to call 911 if I gave the signal. The kids were asleep, thank God, oblivious to the escalating war with Karen. I scanned the backyard, half expecting her to pop out from behind a bush with that smug grin, but it was just me, the crickets, and Rusty growling softly at my side. Whoever had done this was long gone, and deep down I knew it was Karen, or someone she'd paid to do her dirty work. This wasn't just about a mailbox or an HOA anymore. This was personal, and she'd just raised the stakes. By morning, I'd covered the graffiti with a tarp, not wanting Mia or Ethan to see it. Lena was a wreck, her eyes red from a sleepless night. "Jake, this has to stop," she said, her voice cracking as she poured coffee. "She's unhinged. What if she comes after the kids next?" I wanted to reassure her, to say I had it under control, but that damn word on the fence had shaken me too. Karen wasn't just fighting for her house, she was fighting for her whole identity, and people like that don't back down. They double down. I kissed Lena's forehead and promised, "I'll end this. She's not touching our family again." But as I said it, I knew I needed to move faster. Karen was a snake, and I had to cut off her head before she struck again. I called Mike, my lawyer, and filled him in. "Graffiti's not enough for a restraining order," he said, "but it's harassment. Get more cameras, catch her in the act, and we can bury her." I took his advice, installing high-def cameras around the property, ones that could pick up a mouse sneezing at midnight. I also hired a private investigator, a grizzled guy named Tony, who'd worked with me on a few shady contractor disputes. "Find dirt on Karen," I told him. "Anything I can use to make her back off." Tony grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Oh, I'll find something. Control freaks like her always have skeletons." While Tony dug, I kept the pressure on Karen's crumbling empire. I'd already bought out most of the HOA board's houses, turning their loyalty into dust. Now I focused on the remaining neighbors. Most were sick of Karen's reign of terror, and didn't need much convincing to sell or rent from me. I offered fair deals, even threw in perks like waived fees for the first year. By the end of the week, I owned or controlled every house on the street except Karen's and one other, a stubborn old guy named Walt, who refused to budge because he liked the view. Fair enough. I didn't need Walt to finish her off. Karen, meanwhile, was spiraling. Her boycott idea flopped harder than a bad sitcom. Nobody showed up to her emergency HOA meeting except Gary, who looked like he'd rather be at a root canal. She tried posting on the neighborhood's online forum, calling me a tyrannical landlord and begging for support, but I'd already won over most of the residents. One guy, a tech bro named Kyle, even replied, "Karen, maybe if you hadn't fined me for my kid's basketball hoop, I'd care. Good luck." I screenshotted it and sent it to Lena, who laughed for the first time in days. "She's losing it," Lena said, but her smile faded. "That makes her dangerous." Jake, she wasn't wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from Mia's school. "Mr. Carter, we had an incident," the principal said, her voice tense. My heart stopped. "Is Mia okay?" I demanded, already grabbing my keys. She was fine, thank God, but someone had called the school, claiming to be a concerned neighbor, and reported that Mia was being neglected at home. The school had to investigate, which meant a social worker showed up, asking Lena questions, while Mia sat there, confused and scared. I knew it was Karen. It had her slimy fingerprints all over it, petty, vindictive, and just plausible enough to cause trouble. The social worker cleared us, but the damage was done. Lena was furious, and I was ready to drive to Karen's house. and drag her out by her damn pearls. Instead, I called Tony. "Tell me you've got something," I said, pacing my living room. Tony chuckled, that low, gravelly sound that meant he'd hit pay dirt. "Oh, I've got something, all right. Karen's been skimming from the HOA funds for years. Fake invoices, padded expenses. She's pocketed at least 50 grand. Got the bank records to prove it." My jaw dropped. Embezzlement? That was better than I'd hoped. "There's more," Tony said. "Her husband's not as spineless as he seems. Gary's been helping her cover it up, forging signatures on the HOA books. They're both in deep. I felt like I'd just been handed a loaded gun. Embezzlement wasn't just a scandal, it was a crime. I could end Karen with this, not just in Willow Creek, but in handcuffs. But I had to be smart if I went public. Too soon, she'd lawyer up, and her brother-in-law's connections might still protect her, even with Dan under investigation. I needed to tighten the noose first. I told Tony to keep digging, see if he could find anything linking Karen to the graffiti or the school stunt. Meanwhile, I sent a new notice to her house, this one demanding an audit of the HOA's finances. I didn't mention the embezzlement, let her sweat, wondering how much I knew. Karen's response was predictable. She doubled down on crazy. She started banging on neighbors' doors, begging them to stand up to the bully landlord. Most slammed the door in her face, but Walt, the stubborn old guy, let her in. I watched from my porch as she waved her arms, probably spinning some sob story about how I was ruining her life. Walt nodded along, but later he shuffled over to my place with a grin. "She's losing her marbles," he said, leaning on his cane. Offered me $1,000 to join her resistance. I told her to shove it. I laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. Walt was all right, but then things took a darker turn. One night I woke up to Rusty barking like a possessed demon. I grabbed the baseball bat I'd started keeping by the bed and crept downstairs. The cameras had caught something, a figure in a hoodie, sneaking around our backyard. I watched the footage in real time on my phone, my blood running cold. They were carrying a gas can. Before I could call the cops, I heard a crash, glass shattering. I ran to the back door, bat raised, and saw flames licking up the side of our shed. "Lena!" I shouted, waking her. "Get the kids and get out!" I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the kitchen and ran outside, spraying foam at the flames. The fire was small, thank God, and I put it out before it spread to the house, but the shed was toast. The smell of gasoline hung heavy in the air, and scrawled on the ground in chalk was another message: "You'll pay." I called the cops, but again, no proof it was Karen. The figure on the camera was too blurry, and the hoodie hid their face. Lena was shaking, holding Mia and Ethan in the living room while the police took my statement. "Jake, this is too much," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We can't live like this." I felt helpless, a feeling I hadn't known since I was a kid, watching my dad lose our house to foreclosure. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I was a man with a family to protect, and Karen had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The next day, I called a meeting with my investors. "We're accelerating the redevelopment," I told them. "Karen's house goes first." They agreed, eager to start flipping the properties. I filed the paperwork to terminate her lease immediately, citing safety concerns due to the fire. It was a stretch, but Mike assured me it'd hold up in court. I also sent Tony's evidence of the embezzlement to Pete, the reporter, with a note: "Make it front page." By that evening, the local paper's website had a headline: HOA President accused of stealing thousands from neighbors. Karen's name was plastered all over it, along with Gary's. The neighborhood exploded, texts, calls, posts on the forum. Karen was done. But the real twist came that night. As I was checking the cameras, I noticed something odd in the footage from the fire. A glint of metal on the figure's wrist, a bracelet. I zoomed in, my heart racing. It was a charm bracelet, one I'd seen before. On Karen's wrist at every HOA meeting, I had her. I sent the footage to Tony and the cops, along with a note, "Check Karen's jewelry." The game was over, or so I thought. The charm bracelet in the footage was the smoking gun I'd been waiting for. My hands shook as I sent the video to Tony and the cops, the image of those tiny silver charms glinting in the grainy light burned into my mind. Karen had been sloppy, and now I had her dead to rights. Arson wasn't just a petty HOA violation, it was a felony, and I was going to make sure she paid for every second of fear she'd put my family through. Lena was still shaken from the fire, barely letting Mia and Ethan out of her sight, and I could see the toll this war was taking on her. "Jake, please," she said that morning, her voice raw. "End this before someone gets hurt." I nodded, pulling her close. "It's over, Lena. She's done." But even as I said it, a knot of unease twisted in my gut. Karen was a cornered animal, and I knew she wouldn't go down without one last fight. The police moved faster than I expected. By noon, 2 officers were at my door asking to review the footage. I showed them the bracelet, pointing out how it matched the one Karen wore like a badge of honor at every HOA meeting. "We'll need to confirm it," the lead officer, a no-nonsense woman named Martinez, said, "but if this checks out, it's enough for a warrant." I handed over everything, camera footage, Tony's embezzlement evidence, even a photo I'd snapped of Karen's wrist at the last HOA meeting she'd crashed. Martinez raised an eyebrow. "You don't mess around, do you, Mr. Carter?" I smirked. "Not when someone tries to burn my house down." While the cops worked, I kept the pressure on Karen's eviction. The embezzlement story had hit the local paper like a bomb, and Willow Creek was in chaos. Neighbors who'd once cowered under Karen's rule were now openly mocking her. Kyle, the tech bro, posted a meme on the neighborhood forum of Karen as a cartoon villain, clutching her clipboard while flames surrounded her. Even old Walt, who'd refused to sell, stopped by to say, "Told her she'd get what's coming. Didn't think it'd be this good." I laughed, but I kept my eyes on Karen's house. Her SUV hadn't moved in days, and the blinds were drawn tight. She was hiding, but I knew she was plotting. Tony called that afternoon with more dirt. "You're gonna love this," he said, his voice dripping with glee. Karen's been using HOA funds to bankroll her brother-in-law's campaign. Funneled money through fake landscaping contracts to Dan's buddies, who kicked it back to him. It's a whole damn racket. I whistled, low and long. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was a scandal that could take down half the city council. I told Tony to send everything to Pete, the reporter, who was already sniffing around for a follow-up. By evening, the paper's website had a new headline. HOA scandal deepens, links to city council corruption. Karen's name was now tied to Dan's, and the viper's nest they'd built was starting to collapse. But Karen wasn't done. That night, as I was double-checking the new security system, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won? Look outside." My heart stopped. I grabbed the bat and ran to the front door, expecting another fire or worse. Instead, I saw nothing. Just the quiet street, the streetlights casting long shadows. Then I noticed it, a for sale sign in Karen's yard, her name on it as the listing agent's contact. Gary. That spineless weasel was trying to sell their house out from under me, probably thinking they could cash out and disappear before the eviction hit. I laughed, loud enough that Rusty perked up from his spot on the porch. "Nice try, Karen," I muttered, snapping a photo of the sign. She didn't know I'd already terminated her lease. That house was mine, and no amount of real estate tricks would change that. The next morning, I called Mike and told him to serve Karen a cease and desist letter, demanding she remove the sign or face legal action for fraud. "She's got no right to sell what she doesn't own," Mike said, chuckling. "This'll be fun." He delivered the letter personally, and I wished I could have seen Karen's face when she read it, but I didn't have to wait long for her reaction. That afternoon, she stormed up to my door, her face redder than the graffiti she'd left on my fence. "You bastard!" she screamed, loud enough to make the neighbors peek through their blinds. "You can't do this! This is my home, my street!" I stepped onto the porch, keeping my voice calm. "It's my street now, Karen." "And your home?" "You've got 3 days left before the sheriff escorts you out." Her eyes widened, and for a second I thought she might take a swing at me. Instead, she spat on my welcome mat and hissed, "You'll regret this, Jake. I swear to God you'll regret it." She stormed off, and I watched her go, feeling a mix of triumph and dread. 3 days. I just had to keep my family safe for 3 more days, but Karen had one last card to play, and it was a doozy. That night, I got a call from Carla, my developer friend. "Jake, you need to see this," she said, her voice urgent. She sent me a link to a local news site where a video was going viral. It was Karen, tear-streaked and clutching Gary's arm, giving an interview to a sympathetic reporter. "We're being terrorized," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "This man, Jake Carter, bought our street to destroy our lives. He's a bully, a monster." Gary nodded along, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The reporter ate it up, painting Karen as a victim of corporate greed. My jaw dropped. She was flipping the script, making me the villain. Lena watched the video over my shoulder, her face pale. "Jake, this is bad. People are going to believe her." She was right. The comments section was already filling with outrage, calling me everything from a slumlord to a heartless capitalist. I wanted to scream, to drive to the news station and set the record straight. But I knew that's what Karen wanted, to drag me into the mud with her. Instead, I called Pete. "You've got the real story," I said. "The embezzlement, the arson, the corruption. Run it. Bury her." Pete promised a front-page exposé by morning, but I could tell he was nervous. Karen's sob story had traction, and public opinion was shifting. The next day was chaos. Pete's article dropped, detailing Karen's embezzlement and the bracelet evidence tying her to the fire. The cops confirmed they were executing a search warrant on her house that afternoon, but Karen's interview had done its damage. A small group of protesters, mostly her old HOA cronies, and a few clueless locals, showed up outside my house, holding signs that read, "Save Willow Creek and Stop the Slumlord." Mia saw them from her window and asked, "Daddy, why do they hate us?" I had no answer, just a burning rage that Karen had dragged my kids into her mess. I was about to confront the protesters when Martinez called. "We got her," she said, her voice grim. "Found the bracelet in her jewelry box, matches the footage, and we found gas cans in her garage, same brand as the one used in your fire." I exhaled, relief washing over me. "She's being arrested now," Martinez added. "But watch your back. Her husband's still out there and he's not happy." I thanked her and hung up, turning to Lena. "It's over," I said, but she just shook her head. "Not until she's gone, Jake." That night, the sheriff served Karen's eviction notice, backed by the arrest warrant. I watched from my porch as they led her out in handcuffs, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder, her face a mask of fury. Gary trailed behind, carrying a suitcase, his eyes downcast. The neighbors watched in silence, some cheering quietly as the cop car drove away. I thought that was it, the end of Karen's reign. But then came the twist that left me speechless. The next morning, I got a call from Tony. "Jake, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice shaking with laughter. "Gary's been talking to the cops. Turns out he's the one who welded your gate shut. Karen ordered it, but he did the dirty work. And the fire? He helped her plan it, thought it'd scare you off." My mind reeled. Gary, the spineless yes man, had been her accomplice all along. "He's flipping on her," Tony said, singing like a canary to save his own ass. "Says she's got more planned. Something about taking you down with her." I hung up, my heart pounding. Karen was in jail, but her venom was still out there. I checked the cameras, tightened security, and told Lena to keep the kids inside. The war was won, but the final battle was coming, and I had no idea what Karen's last move would be.